Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dear Black Girl. We are so excited to be with you today for our fourth episode in our second season. I can't believe we're getting through all of this so quickly. We love the conversations that we've been able to have this year, and we are looking forward to today's conversation. Before we begin, I want to advise all of our viewers, our parents, and our girls that today's topic is about gynecological health, and parents should make a decision about the age appropriateness of this conversation for their child. As we come off of Black Maternal Health Week, it is more evident to us now more than ever that it is imperative that Black women own their bodies and their health journeys. This becomes easier as women when we equip our girls from childhood. For so long, these conversations have had a stigma, especially in the Black community. It's taboo. We don't talk about periods and menstruations and gynecological health publicly because we've been taught that it's something we should be ashamed of. We are teaching our girls that it is something you should be proud of. Hence today's topic, period proud. We are proud to be women. We have been created with femininity and beauty and the ability to reproduce. And that is something that we should be screaming from the top of our lungs, that we are here and that we own our medical journeys. We know our rights and we know what we can be and what we can do. And that's what we're trying to teach our girls. Today's episode is so exciting. We are going to get started right now. But before we do, share this episode. Someone needs this information, someone who follows you, someone in your community. If you are watching on YouTube, we encourage you to subscribe and hit the notification bell because there are so many conversations that Dear Black Girl is having and you want to be a part of it. We have learned so much this season and we continue to learn as we move forward. So please share this with someone you know, someone you love. Before I take my leave, I want to invite you to sponsor a girl. Dear Black Girl is completely free for all of our girls. They receive mentoring. They receive building of communication skills. They receive so many gifts and merch and activities that we completely sponsor for them. And we need your help. And so we encourage you to sponsor a girl. Visit us at dearblackgirl.us to do so. And now I want to bring up Peyton and her special guest who is going to lead. They are going to lead today's first segment. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Coco. I'm so excited to lead today's session with my bestest friend and my best role model, my mom.
I'm so happy to be with you too, Pei. Today we're going to be chatting with mom and daughter duo, Shanicia Boswell and Kamryn. In the midst of running her global parenting community of over 500,000 women, Black Moms Blog, and retreat company, The Self-Care Retreats, Shanicia Boswell is an advocate for Black parenting, diversity, and helping women prioritize themselves. When Shanicia's daughter Kamryn approached her mom at just 6 years old about periods, Shanicia questioned whether she should have a real conversation with Kamryn or gloss over menstruation. She opted for the age-appropriate full truth, and out of that truth, Shanicia created the Period Party, an annual menstruation celebration for young girls and women that helps them understand and become more prepared for their menstrual cycles.
Welcome to the show, Miss Shanicia and Kamryn. I'm so glad for you to be with us.
Thank you for having us. Are you excited?
You're welcome.
Okay, Shanicia, so we're going to begin with you. Why do you think it's important for Black women and girls to chat about their gynecological health?
I think it's important because it's something that we're all going to go through. And I know for a lot of us, we didn't really have that talk with our parents. It was kind of like you started your period and that was it. And so you had to figure a lot of it figure it out on your own. And I didn't want that to be the experience for my daughter. We're very open about a lot of things. Do you feel like you can talk to me about things in life? Mm-hmm. She says yes. So I wanted this to be another thing that she felt open and comfortable enough to talk to me about, but also that she would be prepared for it when it happened. And I wanted other young girls to feel the same way.
Completely agree with you on that. And with that, how do you think parents can begin to cultivate that open and honest, age-appropriate relationship with their child before having that period talk?
Yeah, I get this question a lot because everyone wants to know how to have the talk. And when I say it's not just one talk, it's a series of conversations that we have to start with our children very young and learning how to just converse with them, right? And as parents, sometimes we parent too much. We're constantly giving direction. We're constantly disciplining. We're constantly telling them what to do instead of sometimes just saying, how do you feel today? How does this make you feel? What can we do better? And so I think that when it comes to having the period talk, it starts well before it starts when they can comprehend. It starts from the beginning of their lives. And so that's just one of the things that you end up talking about. One thing that we also do is we read together. We have different books on menstruation. And so instead of just handing her the book and saying, hey, go read this and ask me questions, it's better if you sit down together and read through the book together. So I think we've gotten through one book. Have we gotten through one book? Almost. We're almost through one book. And so we have another one that we have to read, but that's something that we do. And so as the questions come for her, she can talk to me and it doesn't feel like this embarrassing, pressurized conversation. It's just what we do all the time. But now it's about our menstrual cycles. So.
Right. That's a great tool to read together. Maybe we should try that.
Maybe. We do one page. I do a page. She does a page. So all the pressure isn't on you either.
So Kamryn, did you ever feel uncomfortable speaking with your mom about periods? Why or why not?
So sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. Like it's sort of both. Like sometimes when we talk about it, sometimes it's just disgusting stuff or not disgusting stuff. And yeah.
I can totally relate to that.
Miss Shanicia, what role has an African Americans played in Black women and girls viewing menstruation and other gynecological health topics with such a stigma? And with that, how do you think we could go about disrupting that stigma?
I think that being a Black woman in this country is just difficult as it is. And so what I always like to say is that for a lot of young Black girls in our generations, some of us were raised in single parent households. So our moms didn't have the opportunity and the availability to even have the emotional capacity to say, let me sit down and talk to my daughter about this. And so if you're, looking at the statistics now where it's 64% of Black children are raised in single parent households, with the young girls starting menstruation, there's also a financial weight now that's put on the family to say, oh my gosh, now I have to go buy these supplies. And so mom, maybe not knowing even her own proper communication tools, she's upset. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, my daughter's also going through emotional changes and I don't want to talk about this. And a lot of times mom doesn't even understand what's going on with herself. And so it makes it very difficult to then guide their own children through this process of menstruation. And so I think that's a big part of it. It's like if you have self-understanding over a topic or a thing that's going on with your health and your body, and you view it in a positive way, then we can teach our kids that. But when you don't, you look at it as a negative, and so you kind of pass that generational trauma onto your daughters, and that's what we're trying to break.
That's great. So how would you say a parent who has some of their own personal discomfort and insecurities about the subject, how would you think that they could overcome that insecurity?
Yeah, so I think it's just education in the same way. I know for us, when we have the period party, it's split up into 3 different topics. And one of those topics are specifically for our girls. It talks about their changing bodies. But then the other part is for our moms, because we can't just educate the daughters. We have to also educate the mother. And I always say that in parenting in general, for me being a parent, I'm also being parented by my child. I'm learning every day. Like your daughter said in the other room, she's like, this is my best friend. This is also my mom. And so I think you could probably relate to that. Like I learned so much about myself through my child, but I also realized there are things that I have to tackle on my own and be aware of and say, hey, this is a block for me. Okay, why is this a block? And so if I'm feeling some discomfort around my own body, my own menstrual cycle. What can I do to feel better about that? And that goes through education, that goes through proper dieting, that goes through working out and understanding what can I do to make my menstruation better so that I have a better relationship with my body, because it really is a beautiful thing. And so that's what I want women to see so that they can teach their daughters the same thing.
So, Kamryn, how did your period conversation with your mom impact your confidence?
It sort of boosted up.
You want to keep going? She said it boosted up a little bit. And how did it boost up for you, baby?
So the thing is, it made me feel like comfortable talking about sometimes a little weird stuff, and I mean, like you gotta agree with that. It's a little bit weird.
Same. We on the same topic.
Miss Shanicia, at what age do you think it would be a good idea for a parent to start to have this conversation with their children?
So we started at 6. And I get this question quite a bit. They're like, when is the right age to start having this specific part of the conversation? I always say in parenting, like, your children will kind of bring the questions to you. And if they start asking, it's time to start talking about it. And it also depends on the type of relationship that you have with your child. And so you almost have to like nurture them into a safe space of being able to ask questions. I know for us sometimes, being raised in households where it's do as I say and not as I do, or because I said so, you have to let your children know that it's okay to ask questions. And so even for my daughter, when she did ask that question, I was like, okay, what do I do? What do I do? Do I talk to her about it? And that's what happened. And so for my parents that are asking that, I would say, let them come to you. But if you start to notice that they're having some of those changes, because we know in menstruation, it's not just a period. It's a change in attitude. It's a change in body odor. It's a change in maybe their breast growing and things like that. So if you start to notice those things are happening too, you can gently open the conversation with open-ended questions like, how are you feeling today? Does anything feel different? What do you, think about your body? And so that's a whole nother nurturing part. Like my daughter's 8 years old. Peyton, how old are you?
I'm 9.
You're 9. Have you started your period yet?
No.
No?
No. I never even want to have a period.
So Kamryn hasn't started her period yet either, but she has started to go through some of the other changes. Like we're wearing deodorant now. We're learning the importance of bathing and moisturizing our bodies. We're learning about affirmations and looking at ourselves before we leave the home to make sure that we're well put together, that we've wiped under our arms, that we've brushed our teeth. And so these are all parts of the steps that lead up to the entire conversation of your menstrual cycle, so that when it happens, you're not put in a position to not know how to conquer any of it. And so it feels more like a welcoming celebration versus a scary thing that's happening to your body. But y'all are 8 and 9. You're responding exactly as you're supposed to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that it's more about relationship. The relationship that you have with your child would help to cultivate these conversations and make it easier on a parent to be able to, have this open-ended conversation with them. I appreciate that. With that, do you also think that this is a topic that a parent should have with their son?
Absolutely. Yes. And the reason for that is that when we start to educate our boys on what happens with our girls, they become allies versus bullies. And so once again, these are children. So I'm not expecting perfection. I'm not expecting for them to say, they're children, they're not adults. So they're not going to say, oh, I get it now. This is great. I'm so excited. They're responding as they should. And same thing for our young boys, right? So you're going to bring it to them and they're like, oh my God, this is so gross. I don't want to talk about it. But what you're really doing is building empathy in our boys. And so when you start to talk to him about the things that happens with girls, he could be in 7th grade and his classmate gets her menstrual cycle, sitting in a chair. It happens all the time. And instead of him laughing at her, he says, hey, let me give you my jacket to wrap around your waist because I know what's going on. And he becomes an ally because we don't know what's going on in her household. She may have no idea. And I think it's just something that when you start to build that type of empathy early on in their lives, not only do they grow up to be, good peers to their classmates, they grow into really amazing men who have a really, just wonderful understanding for women in general. And so it all starts early. The things that we know now as adults will prepare us as children will prepare us to be better adults. So I think that boys should be involved in the conversation. It won't be the same as how we talk to our girls, of course, but more so about, like I said, building empathy and understanding that this happens to mostly all women, and that he should be an ally and a protector for her in that case.
Such a great answer, Miss Shanicia.
Anyway,
Kamryn, do you have any advice for a young girl who has no one, or maybe may feel nervous about getting her period?
Yeah. So the thing is, when you get your period, I mean, I wouldn't blame you for being nervous. I'm probably already nervous. So it's you can't really stop it. So the thing is, just try your best and all. And I don't really have an answer. I'm just making sense.
I think that's a good answer, babe. You're right. I think what she's saying is you're going to be nervous, and that's okay. But you can't stop it from happening. So it's going to happen. So you have to find a way to understand it's going to happen. And then, you just do your best. And so it comes with a lot of emotional feelings. And, so if you're having a bad day, that's okay. Being gentle with yourself. And what do we used to do when you were having a bad day? What would I tell you to do to calm yourself down?
Read a book?
Well, no. She said no. Sometimes, yeah, reading a book is good too. But no, we do our breathing, right? Well, mommy says yes. We do our breathing. So so learning tools and techniques to bring yourself back to a place of calm is good too.
Breathing. That's a great answer.
That's good, right?
Yeah,
breathing
now
techniques.
You can do it with me when I'm upset.
Yeah. Miss Shanicia, what is period poverty, and what role can we play in combating it?
Yes, so period poverty is what it is the fact that we have, oh my gosh, I forgot the number. It's completely slipped my mind, but a large majority of women make up the homeless population in our country. And so we forget that a lot of those homeless women and young girls have menstrual cycles, and women are having to choose between if they're going to eat food for the day or if they're going to buy menstrual items for their menstrual cycles during that time of the month. And so, as you know, if you go to a store, a box of tampons or pads can range from $8 to $15. And that's the same cost as a meal or, being able to stay in a shelter. And so women are having to use things like plastic bags, T-shirts, socks, to combat their menstrual cycles. And during this time where everything is already really stressful for us, right? We're emotional. You're also dealing with homelessness on top of that. You're also dealing with the fact that you don't have any money. And so as a part of Black Moms Blog, we work to try to end period poverty by every year we have our menstrual drive where we collect tampons, pads, and menstrual cups for homeless shelters. And so this year we gave to a shelter in Miami, Atlanta, Denver, California, and Texas. And we collected over 3,000 menstrual items in 1 month from our community, just donating and sharing items. So what I always encourage to anyone, even, my young girls that are watching this, and to my moms, when you go to the store to pick up your box, grab an extra box and drop it off at the shelter, because everybody donates clothes and food, which is great, but rarely are we donating menstrual items for the women. And every time we do this, this is our third year, the shelters are always like, this is amazing. Like no one ever donates these items. So that's what period poverty is. And yeah, we're just working to make the world a better place as much as we can.
That's great.
That's
great, right?
Yeah, like you have to help the homeless about something just in case they have a period like that. And it was so nice for you to donate or tampons.
Right, just an act of selflessness.
Yeah.
Miss Shanicia, for a parent who isn't quite ready to broach this topic, how can they better equip and prepare themselves?
Once again, educating themselves and finding out what their blockages are. When we feel uncomfortable discussing or talking about something, it's because there's a block there for us. And it could be something centered around trauma. It could be something centered around insecurities. And also for my moms to learn to be gentle with themselves too, and understand that you don't have to be a perfect parent, but you do have to be an honest parent, right? And so like, I think that this question kind of relates to anything when it comes to parenting, being honest and communicative with your children. You know, we don't always get it right. I don't always get it right as a mom. And so when I'm messing up, I'll ask Kamryn, I'll say, you know, how am I doing today as your mom? And sometimes her feedback is good and sometimes it's not so good. If I'm having a bad day or if I'm working a lot, you know, I'll say to her, I'll say, hey, mommy's having a bad day, but it's not your fault. Because I don't want her to internalize that she's the one that's causing me to have a stressful day. And so just once again, for my moms, you know, be gentle with yourself. Understand that in teaching your children how to accept themselves, you have to accept yourself. And that is many, many years of unlearning for some of us, some of the bad things that cause us not to be able to do that.
It's amazing. I have to give you snaps on that.
And our final question for you, Miss Shanicia, what do you say to a young girl who doesn't have anyone to chat with about their or her period?
So for my young girls who maybe don't have anyone to talk with at home, find an ally at school. That ally could be another student. It could be your teacher. It could be your guidance counselor. And this is why I always encourage moms to not just show up for your kids, but show up for their friends, because you don't know what type of home environment some of these girls are coming from, and you might be that ally for them. I know one thing we did last year for Kamryn's her 8th birthday party. She had a sleepover with like 6 of her friends. And I do sister circle events for adult women here in Atlanta. And we had a small sister circle for her friends. You remember that? We all sat in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
You remember what we talked about? Today. No. So I just talked to them about basically like recognizing their strengths and their powers. And this is a group of 8-year-olds. And so I had them go around and talk about things that they loved about themselves. I had them talk about their strengths. Why did they think they were good friends to their friends? And so as a mom, sometimes you have to be a mom to your community and not just to your child, because that child may not have anyone at home or have a mom who just doesn't know how to have that conversation. So that would be my advice.
Good advice, Miss Shanicia.
Well, we want to thank you both so much for being with us today and talking so openly and honestly. And for those who may want to continue this journey with you, where can they find you online?
They can find me right here where you see it, Shanicia Boswell or Black Mom's Blog. So my personal account is more for my adults. Well, both of them are for adults, honestly, but it's more women centered. It's more around self-care, self-love, femininity. It's my personal account, Shanicia Boswell, and Black Mom's Blog is all things motherhood. But if you're a mom, you should be following both. So that's where you can find me. That's across all social media networks. Also website, ShaniciaBoswell.com, BlackMomsBlog.com. And for my moms, we have a private Facebook group. It's called Black Moms Blog Community, and it's on Facebook. It's over 40,000 women in that group, and it's a great resource to have real-time conversations and find different moms in your area that, you know, can be a part of your mom tribe.
That's amazing.
That's so amazing.
And I just want you to put a shameless plug out there for yourself.
So shameless plug would be the release of Oh Sis, You're Pregnant. And this is the, where's my camera? There we go. If you can see it, it's the Ultimate Guide to Black Pregnancy and Motherhood. This book was released on March the 16th. And the best way I can sum it up is to say it is the what to expect when you're expecting for Black moms. We discuss heavily about Black maternal health, learning how to use your voice, learning how to get your groove back after you had the baby, what it's like if you're a single mom embarking on this journey, and also including all the medical lingo that you need as it pertains to your growing belly bump and the things that your body's going to be experiencing during your pregnancy. And you can buy that on Amazon, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, pretty much wherever books are sold, bookshop.org, which supports small local independent bookstores. But you should have a copy for yourself, and you should have one for a friend if they're pregnant.
It's amazing.
What an informative conversation today. Now we're switching gears to our second segment that will be led by Dear Black Girl Dream Team leader Margelle and her bonus mom, Miss Melinda.
Thanks, Peyton. This next segment is going to be exciting. First, because we have 2 Black female doctors joining us, that's definitely worth celebrating. And secondly, because they're going to equip girls and their parents with all of the insider information we should know about our bodies and our medical rights.
As a mom to a teenage daughter, I will definitely be taking notes because I know this information will be rich. So let's welcome Dr. Rachel Bervell and Dr. Tamandra Morgan to the show.
Dr. Rachel Bervell is focused on serving those who are most vulnerable and tackling disparities in medicine. She graduated from Harvard University, Georgetown University, and the University of Illinois. At Chicago College of Medicine, where she received her undergraduate, graduate, and medical degrees respectively. She is dedicated to equitable care, reproductive justice, health advocacy, and wellness for all communities, and bring those interests together on various platforms, including on Instagram at the Black ObGyn Project. She did her intern year in ObGyn in Southern California, and she is continuing her training as a family and women's health practitioner in Boston.
Dr. Tamandra Morgan is a rising third-year ObGyn resident at the University of California, San Francisco training program. She is a graduate of Stanford University, where she majored in human biology with a focus on hereditary diseases and cancer. Prior to matriculating in medical school at the University of Illinois, she completed a master's degree in genetics counseling at the Johns Hopkins National Institutes of Health. Dr. Morgan is passionate about preventative medicine and personalized genomics as a means of improving health outcomes for our patients. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Welcome to the show, doctors. First question is for Dr. Morgan. How can parents prepare their girls for their first ObGyn appointment? How can girls prepare themselves?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us. We're so excited to be here, and thanks for those lovely introductions. That's a great question. How can we prepare our girls for their first gynecologic visit? And I think a lot of what we saw earlier in this interview is happening. You know, talking to your daughter about what they can expect, what the changes are associated with puberty, using anatomical terms to talk about different parts of your body, knowing awareness of your vagina, what your periods will be like. I think that's very important to have open conversations at home, and any concerns you have can be brought up with your doctor when you visit them. Usually the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, which is the governing body of obstetrics and gynecologists, recommend that a girl has their first gynecologic visit around ages 13 to 15. Sometimes this might be sooner if there is an issue that you particularly want to discuss.
That's a great advice that you're giving for us as mother and daughter. And Dr. Bervell, what physical changes does a young girl experience during adolescence? What are some things a girl can expect to happen as her body changes?
Absolutely. You know, there are so many changes that happen during adolescent years, you know, especially in your preteen years and your teen years, which many of the girls watching are. Those are changes in the way that you think, changes in the way that you might communicate as you're becoming a young adult. You might start noticing that you're dealing with new feelings and more complex emotions. And as you experience those changes, you'll also start seeing changes in how you look physically. So you might start having growth spurts more than you've had before, which is incredible. But then you'll also have some other things like pimples and acne, things that some people might feel a little bit embarrassed about. You might notice that hair is growing in new places, specifically around your genitals. So we call that pubic hair, or in your armpits. And you might start having body odor, which means that you have to take care of your hygiene in a different way, wearing deodorant, for example. More specifically for girls, though, what starts to happen is that you start developing into a woman, right? And you start noticing the development of your breasts and the onset of your menstrual cycle, or as many of us are familiar with, it's called our periods. And this is really the onset of puberty. And, you know, I think it's important for us to define what puberty is. Puberty happens to everybody. It happens to girls. It happens to boys. I went through puberty. Dr. Morgan went through puberty. You know, it's a chapter change in our life. And it's really that moment where we reach what physicians call sexual maturity. But in terms of what it means for a girl, it just means that now you're capable of reproducing and having a family if that's something that you intend to do later in the future. You know, I think these changes, I do want to make it clear that puberty, just the same way we are all different, you know, I look different, I sound different than Dr. Morgan, and you know, we can be doing the same thing, we still have different experiences. Puberty happens differently. So it starts at different ages. You might not have the same changes as your friends and colleagues. It might not be happening at the same rate or at the same pace. And in that same manner, things might start looking different, right? So at the end of your puberty years, some people might have smaller breasts or larger breasts. It doesn't mean that you did not enter this change. It just means that it's now you. It is your unique body that you can be so proud of because it's beautiful no matter what.
Yes, I totally agree. And I feel that like no one should be ashamed of their body. It's just the physical changes that's, you know, like bringing you into adulthood. So, Dr. Morgan, what is a menstrual cycle and what does it mean for a growing girl?
Great question. So the menstrual cycle, also known as your period, is a monthly hormonal cycle that every woman's body goes through in a way to prepare for pregnancy. So for people who get their period, it's usually somewhere between the ages of 12 and 14. However, it can vary from as early as 8 years old to as late as 16 years old. And a lot of that can be dependent on your family history. So sometimes the age that your mom got her period might give us a better insight on the age you will be when you get your period. So each month, your ovaries release an egg, and this is, if it's not fertilized, if you don't get pregnant, what happens during your period is that the lining of your uterus sheds because it does not need to have an environment to have a pregnancy. And so that shedding of the lining of your uterus is your period that happens. So oftentimes with a period, because your uterus is shedding its lining, you might have menstrual cramps, which are just painful cramps associated with the uterus contracting. So often women will take Advil, they might use heating packs just to help with those cramps. And sometimes you might have mood changes or you might be very emotional during your period because it's, like I said, it's a hormonal change that happens each month. And so some of those hormonal changes might affect your mood. They might affect your appetite. You might be eating a little bit more sweets and sugars. And sometimes it can make you more tired than normal. So for every woman, their menstrual cycle can vary. Some people don't have any symptoms. Some people have all the symptoms. And I think what's important in some of these discussions you can have with your mom is what their menstrual cycle has been like. Did they have really bad periods? Did they have really bad cramps? And things like that, because that can give you a little bit of foresight into what your experience might be like. And if your experience is very painful, or if there are some things that seem a little bit unusual, those are definitely questions that you should not hesitate to ask your gynecologist about, just to make sure everything is normal for you.
This is such a journey, and the best part of a journey is being informed and supported. And just providing this platform, just want to thank both of you doctors for bringing this information forward, because I think it's so important for our young girls, and even for women as mothers, and just a support system for all girls to have. Dr. Bervell, what is PMS? Does everyone experience it? How does a young girl manage it?
I think Dr. Morgan did a really great job of describing what the menstrual cycle is, and how with those hormonal changes come other subsequent symptoms. And PMS, or premenstrual syndrome, is kind of part of that entire process with those hormonal changes. Sometimes people have different emotional feelings around the time of their period, or right before the time of their period. And that can go from agitation or frustration. That can be more emotional, feeling teary, or finding that you're sad on things or about things that didn't make you sad before. But as with the cycle, as soon as that cycle is over and that time goes away, you kind of go back to a baseline. And because you become so equipped and well aware of how your period cycles may come, many women and many girls are able to know, okay, it's the end of the month, my period's about to happen, and I know at this point I might get a little bit cranky. I can take a break. I can, reassess where I am and make a decision about how I feel, do meditation, really take care of myself. All of these symptoms, again, run in a range. Some people might experience PMS. That's really hard and really frustrating for them. And other people might not have symptoms that they can even pinpoint at all. And so it's really important for you, as you're going through these changes, to try to have this sense of what I call body awareness. It's understanding what your body is feeling, the changes that are going on in your body, around your body, and that includes with your emotions as well.
There's also nowadays a lot of great apps on smartphones, like the iPhone. You can put in the first day that you started your period, and then based on that information, it can predict what day you'll start your period the next day. So you won't be caught off guard. You can be prepared and make sure you have all your supplies, and if you need medication for pain. So I recommend for people, once you first start getting your period, it can be a little irregular, meaning it won't happen at the same time every month. And so just tracking it on a calendar can be a helpful way of managing that.
Yes, and I myself will try that. So, Dr. Bervell, how can parents support their daughters in making healthy gynecological decisions?
This is such a great question, and I am so glad you're asking it on behalf of your parents. As parents, one of the most powerful things you can do is providing your children with information that they need to make healthy and safe choices about their bodies long before they're in a position to, to make those decisions on their own. And in fact, being part of events like this, Dear Black Girl, or events with Daughters and Vessels, is the perfect example of how you can educate on topics of reproductive health and gynecological health and just wellness overall, even if it's outside of gynecology. You are providing your daughter with the tools that she needs to be empowered, and you're making her better equipped when she does enter the healthcare setting as a patient during her first ObGyn appointment. One of the ways that you can continue to support your daughter, especially during her doctor's appointment or before her first gynecological healthcare interaction, is really respecting the role of body awareness. I alluded to it earlier, but that's one of the things that you can do, and you don't even have to be a healthcare provider to do so. That can mean that you're using the proper terms for body parts and being comfortable to do so, whether that's in English or whatever respective language you speak at home. So saying things like vagina or vulva or labia or cervix. And I think Shanicia in the conversation prior made a really great point that sometimes as parents, we still have a lot of learning to do ourselves. So letting your daughter know that together we're learning about our bodies, together we are going through changes, and this is how it can be experienced. And by having the right language and putting yourself in the right context, our daughters can communicate more clearly about their bodies. And it's so important to do that when they're patient, so that when the doctor asks about experiences of their bodies, there's first no more shame, right? I think especially as Black women, we need to break down the barriers of shame and feeling embarrassed about our bodies and be able to talk about it with confidence. Number two, when the doctor is talking to your daughter, she can be really specific now about what is happening as she grows and develops. And that's huge. That not only helps her in this interaction, she's starting to become a young adult, but it helps the doctor treat her better, right? And, it also, I think, finally provides her a context to appreciate and respect other people and their own bodies and their autonomy. And I think that's huge, especially in today's day and age. It gives her the maturity to know that we are all different, we're all human, we all have bodies that are very complex, and that, some conversations are very private, but at the same time, we know that it's a shared experience with everybody. So I think this question is so powerful. I'm really glad that you asked it. And I think that as parents do these things, use this sense of body awareness, they'll really help their daughters during that first gynecological visit.
Dr. Morgan, what should Black parents specifically know about their daughters and their own gynecological rights?
Wow, that's an amazing question. Thank you for asking it. I think that, it's very important, as Dr. Bervell said, to emphasize body autonomy, and that children should know that whatever happens to their body cannot happen without their consent. You are in control of your body. You shouldn't feel forced to do anything. You should never feel that something's happening to you that you do not want to happen in all contexts. So especially at the doctor's office. So when you do have your first gynecologic visit, everything should be done with your consent, letting you know what's going to happen at that visit, whether you're going to get a pelvic exam, who's going to be in the room. If you want your parent to be in the room with you, that's perfectly okay. If you want to talk about topics that you would rather your parent not be in the room for while you discuss, that's also okay. And you should be able to feel comfortable making that decision. So I think it's always important to know what's going to happen to you, asking questions, being like, what are we going to do? What exam are we going to do? And making sure you're on board and that you feel comfortable, you don't feel pain. If you are having pain during a pelvic exam, feeling empowered to say, this is painful, I need you to stop. Or asking that they try a different way, whether it's a smaller speculum, which is the device we use to do pelvic exams, asking for a smaller size, or just there's many things that we can do to make a pelvic exam more comfortable. So don't feel that you need to suffer through anything. That should never be the case at your gynecologic visit. Asking your provider about vaccinations. You guys may have heard of the HPV vaccination. That's a vaccination that helps prevent cervical cancer cases. And so that vaccination is actually recommended to begin as early as age 11. And so if you make that decision that this is something that you and your daughter want to pursue, talking to your doctor about the merits and the risk of having that vaccination, having open conversations is also important. And I think also, especially for Black families, as we touched on, sometimes there's this element of shame or stigma. Feel free to talk to your gynecologic provider about family history. Some conditions run in the family. Some families have multiple people who were diagnosed with breast cancer, ovarian cancer, uterine cancer. These are all sort of gynecologic cancers, and there are some hereditary risks for these cancers, meaning you may have a genetic change that makes you more likely to develop these cancers. And unless you tell your provider that you have a family history, you might not know, and we might not be able to prevent something that could have been preventable by earlier screening and things like that. So definitely feeling in control of your family history and talking to your provider about that, I would definitely recommend.
Thank you so much for that.
Dr. Bervell, why is it important for young Black girls to become familiar with their gynecological health?
Absolutely. You know, I think that it's so important for you to start having these conversations because it will boost your confidence. It's scary to go through a change, right? You think you know your body, then all of a sudden you look down and things are starting to develop and evolve. And when that happens, it can be frightening. And so the ability for you to be familiar with your gynecological health, even before it happens and while it happens, makes you feel more confident. You say, oh dear, this change is happening. I was anxious about it, but I knew about it. I had the tools in my back pocket to prepare me for this next chapter change. And how exciting. I'm becoming a young woman. I'm becoming an adult. I'm becoming like my mom, someone I admire. I think it's really important for you to also be equipped with the tools and the words to speak like an adult, and it happens over time, right? It takes moments of education, hearing things that might feel uncomfortable and embarrassing, but realizing, okay, it's okay to say this word. It's okay to mention this to my mom or to my friend or to my doctor, because we're all eventually going to have to talk about it pretty openly. No matter where you are and who you are, I think that you should remember that being familiar with your gynecological health, just like learning anything, is a process and kind of a journey. And so if you have questions about your body, it's really important to talk to an adult that you trust, or mention it to a physician or a doctor when you have the opportunity to see them, and ask them, what should I know? What more should I know about my body so that I'm better prepared moving forward? But I think overall, it just boosts your self-esteem to know about yourself. It makes you more confident.
I think that's so important. And as parents, mother figures, as those changes happen, it gives you a chance to better connect with your daughter, and just to have them be more comfortable, to communicate more, and both can relate, like, oh, it's that time of the month, leave us alone, so you can relate in those changes. Instead of making it uncomfortable, you make them more comfortable in growing into who they are going to become. As their body changes, they know that you can both grow together and learn together throughout these changes. Dr. Morgan, what questions should we be asking that we haven't asked?
So you guys have asked some great questions. I would say, we talked about how usually the first gynecologic visit is somewhere between ages 13 and 15, but you can choose to make an appointment with your gynecologist at whatever point you feel like you have questions. And in between that, usually it's an annual visit, but if you have questions, if you want to talk to your gynecologist about upcoming issues related to puberty, related to being a young woman, you can have these conversations with your gynecologist. They are there to provide you, to counsel you about things that might not be an issue currently, but that you want to start planning for eventually. Maybe if you know that your mom had really heavy periods and had fibroids, maybe you want to talk about what that might mean for you when you get to start having periods. There's a lot of things that we talked about, family history and the importance of that. So I think it's very important to find a gynecologist that you feel like you can establish a relationship with. One of the reasons why I decided to become an obstetrics and gynecologist is that I want to take care of women throughout all phases of their life. We see children, we see pregnant patients, and we see women well after they stop having babies and they're in menopause. And so I really enjoy that ability to have continuity with patients throughout all times of their life. And it's great if you can find someone who you can share that relationship with, because it's great to feel comfortable with the person that you're telling very intimate things about your physical health and how that might impact your emotional and mental health. So your gynecologist is there to really give you a comprehensive care of your mental, emotional health, of your physical health. And it's important that you feel comfortable with them. So ask around. Sometimes word of mouth is the best way to find a provider. If you want a Black provider, one thing that the Black ObGyn Project is very proud of is we can key you into resources on how to find someone in your area, because that often happens to be very helpful. Having a provider who knows what it's like to be a Black woman in America is very important. So those are some of the things that I think are important to start considering now as you start to establish care with a gynecologist.
Yes, and if I'm not wrong, one of the hormones that is like included with the menstrual cycle, is it estrogen?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you.
Correct.
Dr. Bervell, aside from vaginal health, how does a young girl navigate acne, hormone-influenced mood swings, and other physical changes during adolescence?
That is such a good question, Miguel. I think, we focus a lot on menses, our menstrual cycle, our vaginal health, our gynecological health, but you're right, adolescent is full of other changes in our bodies. I think Dr. Morgan had mentioned earlier these apps, phone apps, or even other resources that are wonderful for both parents and daughters on the internet that kind of remind you that these changes are happening to everybody. It normalizes the experience, number one. Getting acne, it's horrible. It sucks to have a pimple. I remember when I turned 16, I had a huge pimple on my face. I'll never forget it. But remembering that we're all experiencing those changes, and if it gets to a point that it's starting to become more detrimental or more serious for your health, and it's having other impacts on your well-being, your confidence, your mental health, or whatnot, making sure that you're open to talking about it with someone, again, that you trust. The same thing with the hormonal influences, being able to track your period. Again, in the beginning, it might not be as consistent as we hope. It will be probably not every 4 weeks, but it'll come here and there. It might have a different flow in terms of the blood that you see. But when it does start to regulate, knowing what that cycle looks like so that you can recognize when you'll have those mood swings and those emotional changes. I do think that making sure you're seeing these examples of changes, whether that's through books or you're watching short educational films. There's some amazing resources on YouTube as well that really show you that puberty is a huge change, but it's something that we can all identify with. And so having the opportunity to tap into that will really help you during these big changes in your adolescent and teen years. Overall, I just want to say, when it happens, congratulations. Call me, call Dr. Morgan. We're here to root you on and support you. And also tell your mom, tell your mother figures, let them know that, hey, this has happened to me. What more should I do for myself so that you can always feel prepared?
Wow, what an informative and powerful conversation. Dr. Morgan and Dr. Bervell, we are grateful for your time and all the great information you shared with us today. How can our viewers stay connected with you?
Thank you guys so much for having us. We were so thrilled to be a part of this event. Please stay in contact with us by following us on our Instagram.
Oops, it looks like, I don't know if she froze, but I'll finish her thought. On the Instagram at the Black ObGyn Project. And we also are really responsive via email at blackobgynproject@gmail.com. We are here to support you, and we're thrilled that you are part of Daughters and Vessels and very humbled to have been here this afternoon.
Thank you again. Well, everyone, we have come to the end of today's show. Please welcome Peyton, who will send us off today.
Thank Thank you, Morgelle. Today's show got a bit uncomfortable, but was very, very powerful. We hope that it helped to begin chipping away at the stigma that Black women and girls face with their health. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next week for conversation on Black beauty. Have a fantastic week. Bye!